to You Can Do It Too, a podcast highlighting regular folks who followed their dreams and made it happen. I'm Joan Hutchinson, your restaurant maven. I've been described as a risk taker, though I never thought of myself that way. My mom always told me I could do or be whatever I wanted as long as I set my mind to it, and I believed her. I was an actor performing in theater in Orange and LA County, California, as well as music videos, commercials, and independent films. I also did stand-up in bars and clubs. Absolutely loved that. Afterwards, I ran a successful catering company that led to owning and operating a top 10 Orange County restaurant and catering venue. All this prior to earning a bachelor's degree in business management and marketing. You know what I learned by going to school after all of that? You don't need a degree to accomplish your dreams. You need drive, passion, and a belief in yourself. You also need some caring folks who support you and believe in you. I didn't need a formula to tell me how to properly staff for a week. I needed common sense and a deep care for creating outstanding dining experiences for my guests. Since then, I've gone on to work in country clubs, casinos, a culinary school, and now hotels. I've been coaching and consulting with salespeople and small business owners for the last few years and blogging with business advice. I just wanted to do more, to share more, to reach more of you. I decided to talk with folks I admire, lots of amazing 30-somethings, even some remarkable 20-somethings, and of course, more seasoned folks who kick ass at what they do, to show you that you can do it too. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. Give us a thumbs up or a say hello in the chat if you're on Riverside or if you're on Facebook. Let us know you're here. And then we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Just type them in the chat. So today we're speaking with Ginny St. Lawrence, entrepreneur, artist, blogger. Ginny owns OPT, the largest astronomy equipment online retailer selling to the general population. Some of her clients include NASA, JPL, and MIT. She's a nationally and internationally collected abstract artist doing multiple shows a year. And she has a new project, blogging about finance, called Finance Wives. Welcome, Ginny St. Lawrence.
Thank you so much, Joan. I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor.
Yay, I'm super excited that you're here. You just do so many things and you do them all so well. And you share messages of positivity all along the way. You just need to check your Instagram at Ginny St. Lawrence Art. So much inspiration and positive messages are everywhere. So I love that. And thanks for that.
Absolutely.
I feel like, we talk a lot about problems and issues, and you hear a lot of negative things in the news. And when you go online, so it's nice to go online and see positive messages. All right. So you have a lot going on. Let's start with OPT.
Sure. Yeah. Let's dive in.
I did a little research on you. You worked there for a year, and now you're the youngest COO in the 76-year history of OPT. That had to be intimidating.
It was. It definitely was. I came from a background of business. I was raised, my parents were both entrepreneurs their entire life. Once they got together and they married, they owned and operated a very successful television production show. And so they owned and operated that for 30 plus years doing how-to automotive shows. So things like muscle cars, trucks, extreme 4x4, you name it. And they were broadcasting on Spike back in the day, TNN and NBC, Fox, MSNBC Sports, all over the place. And so I knew at a very early age that business was for me, and having, small businesses, whether it was making arts and crafts just for friends and family, kind of trading my time for experience, not necessarily money. pulling weeds in the neighborhood for a dollar or two, all the way up to, more experienced businesses as I sort of got older. So, OPT, it was a natural progression. It wasn't something that was necessarily in the cards, to be honest. I didn't plan on purchasing that business, but moved to California, worked there for a year, excuse me. And my business partner and I realized the owner, who had it for 46 years, he was in pretty poor health. And so we had kind of heard rumors that he was looking to maybe liquidate the inventory and then just kind of dissolve the company. And we're like, hey, this is a really great, thriving business. I mean, there's definitely some things to fix. But this is an amazing business with an amazing set of staff, great vendors. It's in a growing industry. And so we stepped in and against better judgment, I guess at the time, maybe, we were a little naive into the work that was required, but we made an offer, and we're still rocking and rolling today.
Awesome. So you said, you were a little naive. So what was the reaction from your family and friends? Were they saying, well, you don't know anything about this? How are you going to do this?
I think that, my parents know me pretty well, obviously, raising me, and they expected, with a lot of my prior entrepreneurial experience, like this was just a natural progression and sort of the next step for me. I'm sure they wish the business wasn't in California because they're in Tennessee. So they knew that was going to obviously, cement me 2,000+ miles away from them, which of course any parent, doesn't necessarily want their children across the country if they can help it. And yeah, I don't think that they were, surprised necessarily. I think once we started going through due diligence, I definitely pulled them in with the acquisition team and said, you guys have done this. They sold their company and bought it back twice. So they know a thing or two about acquiring a company and selling a company. And so, looking at some of the books, it's like, okay, there's some things that, don't make sense here, don't line up. But because I had worked at the company for a little over a year, I knew the inner workings, and I knew it was a business that had a lot of potential, because I saw some of the broken processes and I saw some of the opportunities. And so I said, hey, the financials may not necessarily reflect that, because it was kind of mom and pop run a little bit. So I think having that inside out perspective really, really helped, friends and family have the confidence in me. And then also to just, the history of me having prior businesses, it kind of made sense.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, you got to have that support. It's so important. If you had a bunch of people telling you no, then you might second guess yourself, but you sound like you were ready to jump in.
We were ready to jump in. I think the acquisition lawyer was like, I don't know that I would buy this business. I'm not sure that I would. There might be better opportunities, but so there was some wavering support in some areas, but knowing what we knew, it was like, hey, this is a no-brainer for us. We're going to forge ahead and we'll learn something, so
Love
here we are.
Attitude.
We're still at it.
Yeah. Obviously you're no stranger to online businesses, right? I mean, you took this company that is selling online, and what year was that it was selling online?
Oh gosh. Well, they actually OPT. So it was originally back in 1947, I believe, if I have my numbers right. Maybe it was 45. Very old and rich history of a company. They were an early adopter of getting online. So we actually in our headquarters have a framed picture of the very first website that went live for OPT, and that was back in the 90s, early 90s had to have been, when the dot-com boom happened. And it's great. So they were selling online we acquired the company back in 2016, but their processing was very manual. It wasn't very automated. It wasn't what e-commerce, at the time the company was doing 12 to 14 million a year. I think their peak year was like 16. And so there was no reason that business couldn't have done double what it was doing. It just had to have some better automated processes and whatnot. So that was one of the first things we did, was a systems conversion to try and consolidate. It's crazy to have so many brilliant employees working on, manually processing an order that could be handled through a proper e-commerce back end. And so we looked at ways that we could give people some more of their creative energy back at work and whatnot, and also grow revenue. And so, so they were, the company got online early. We just kind of helped nudge things along in a more progressive way and modernize a lot of the way that the business was transacting.
Which is cool. I mean, so they understood that the internet was a great place to be. They just didn't have the right tools to be as productive as you saw them being.
Right. Yeah, they weren't maximizing like digital marketing and a lot of just shopping campaigns, understanding Google and, Facebook ads and all the various different ways in which you can promote an online e-commerce business. It just wasn't, they were there, but kind of in the shadows a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so much to learn, and it's so constantly changing.
Oh yeah.
And, older people, I'm saying older people, but people in their 50s, which aren't, they're not old, but a lot of them are afraid of the internet and of learning how to use it. And, they don't realize that it's not as hard now, especially now. Just Google it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, anything that, any piece of information that you're looking to learn, there's so many amazing resources that is literally a Google away, whether it's, if you prefer to watch videos, you can learn there on YouTube or, read a blog article, an Instagram post, whatever it may be. So I agree. There's tons of resources, and it's not as scary as, it may seem to be.
Right. What, did you hit any hurdles with OPT, or was it just boom, took off?
Oh man, how long are these episodes again? Absolutely. Yes, 100% we hit hurdles. We like to say like 1 year at OPT is like, 7 actual years. It's like a dog year at OPT, because it's just been so incredibly impactful, and just so much like shoved into a 12-month window. So, some of the biggest hurdles I think early on were just, we knew the business working there for about a year or so, which gave us a lot of insider information that normally from an outside looking in, you wouldn't have that with a company that you're purchasing. Everything's sort of, rainbows and butterflies. And then you get in and you realize, oh gosh, like, the foundation's cracked. We have to redo this we have to restructure this whole thing. So we did kind of come in with a little bit of that insider advantage, being like first customers, then employees, and then owners of the company. And then I would say some of the original challenges, Joan, were a lot of the systems and just employees, finding the right people to hire, being able to retain the right people, making sure when you do make process changes that you're getting everybody's buy-in. There was a lot there. I would say the biggest challenge for me personally was just, frankly, having a business partner. It's a blessing and a curse, because, there'd be times where I'd say, hey, we got to go right. And he would want to go left. And so it would sort of put us almost backpedaling and sort of regrouping and saying, okay, well, explain to me why you want to go left. Let me explain to you why I want to go right. And sometimes decisions would just get stalled. And I felt as though, oh man, we could really be pushing this thing forward, a lot faster if we just did this. And so I think it was finding the balance and the respect of just being able to work with one another. I always say, like, sometimes who you're in business with is almost as important as who you marry, because it's every decision you make is affecting, multiple people's livelihoods and vendors and customers. And, there's a huge ripple effect to everything that you do. And I take that very seriously. And so it's that, I think, for me has been the biggest challenge. But with that, like anything in life, you grow exponentially. And so as a person, as a business partner, as an employer, and gosh, just every little ism of my personality, like I've grown so much in just learning how to better deal with people, how to be a better leader. When I'm challenged, how to react and or not react, things to do, not things not to do. There's always something to learn from any challenge. And so it's I think it's been a very healthy thing for me to experience and to go through with a partner, because there's also that shared experience where in the lows of the business, I'm not sitting there by myself. I do have somebody there with me to lean on in that sense. So it's been a challenge for sure because our personalities were just both very headstrong. So finding that balance, I would say, has been the biggest challenge. But as long as there's equal respect and understanding, excuse me, and trust, you know, all ships are sailing smoothly in a
Nice.
partnership. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about so your changing processes. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big challenge for any and all managers. Is a new manager comes in and sees, just like you talked about, like this hotel that I've been working with, not using their technology that's right there at their fingertips. And having employees who've been doing it this way for years.
And it's not broken, so why do we fix it, right?
Why are you telling me I have to do it a different way? I've been doing it this way for years. Got any advice on how to deal with that? How to get them on board? How to get them on your team?
Man, change is tricky. I think some people look at change and they see opportunity. Some people see change and it just immediately creates fear and anxiety for them, because they're the stable, constant type of people, and they like having it outlined, and they know what they're doing. They don't want someone to come in and change it. What I've learned in that experience is just having everybody's complete and total buy-in. I'm not going to tell, my buyer who's placing orders for certain stock and inventory and whatnot, I'm not going to tell him how to do his job. My job is to best understand how he currently does his job and then try to find ways in which we can make his job easier for him, more streamlined, less headaches. So I always like kind of coming in seeking to understand, like, hey, Joan, what are your blockers with X, Y, and Z? Like, let's talk through that. In a perfect world, you walk into work, what does that look like? What does your perfect day look like? What holds you back? What's your biggest frustration? When you go home to your wife or your husband at night, what are you complaining about? And really try to understand where they're coming from. And then take that knowledge and take that understanding and collectively and collaboratively try to work with them to find better solutions. It's just problem solving, and sometimes I used to work in sales and I had a CRO tell me once that like 90% of life is helping people get out of their own way. 90% of sales is helping people get out of their own way.
Mm.
And I always think back to that. And so I try to kind of look at that through maybe more of a positive lens and say, like, how can I, yes, help them get out of their own way, but also help remove blockers for them so that they can, walk this path Monday through Friday, whatever it may be, easier, more streamlined, give some creative freedom back to their job. So they're not just, going from a 15 multi-step process that's almost brain dead to like automating what needs to be automated, and then really allow them to sort of exude their personality into the position if in fact it like allows for that. So I think you just have to, I guess my advice to that would be like get the people's buy-in, but make it a collaborative process. I think if you just say, hey, go do this because I told you so, like, oof, that doesn't work great.
Right.
There is a change management. And that's something we've learned over the years, doing it, the wrong way, is like, there is a change management to this process, and you have to make sure that things are well outlined for people and that they feel safe in this new process and that they understand, most importantly, the why. Because you can tell someone how to do something or what to do, but if they don't understand why they're doing it, I think that can create a lot of uncertainty for people, and they don't buy into whatever it is you're telling them what or how to do. So I think the why is very important, and that collaborative process, I think, really sort of builds that connection and helps explain the why as well.
Mm-hmm. And makes them feel like they're part of the solution and they're not just being told how to do
Right.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. I love that. Thank you for that bit of
Of
advice for
course.
anybody
Of
who's
course.
listening and for me. So you've been running OPT for 6 years now, right? And a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you started promoting yourself as an artist at GinnySt.LawrenceArt.com. And then, like I said, your Instagram handle is at GinnySt.LawrenceArt. I already talked a little bit about how I'm excited about how you are so positive. I love the messages that you include with your art. Where did you
Thank
get
you.
that? So tell us a little bit about that.
About my art?
Yeah, and about them. Why you think it's important to put a little message in there?
I mean, man, as an artist, so much of what you do is it's a selfish pursuit. And for me, it's that creative outlet where I can go and sort of disappear from the world, and time, like 5 minutes becomes 3 hours, just miraculously. And it's an area for me to sort of allow anxious energy to become creative and to become positive. And it's just a medium for me to express myself, and in ways that, intellectually or spiritually or whatever I maybe can't do. And so I always try to like bless the canvas, as I say, with like a positive message on the front and then also on the back. Usually it's questions like, what gets you out of bed in the morning and why, like go chase that or something like that. I always put that on the back of every single canvas and a lot of times on the front of it. And the why I do that, Joan, is um, art's very personal for me. Like each piece is a little part of me out there in the world, hanging in someone's house or bathroom, wherever it may hang. And I just like to create a conversation with my art. So when I do shows and I'm hanging in breweries or wherever my art may be, you'll always see a little tag and it's got the name and it's got the dimensions and the price, but then it always has some sort of, usually it's a question that I'm posing to the viewer. And that's just to create a dialogue with them in the art, and then also just internally to start asking maybe some questions that maybe people in their life don't ask them, or maybe they haven't considered. And so it gives them a moment to stop and view the art and maybe go a little bit deeper than just what meets the eye. And I don't know, I produce only original art. I don't do any prints, and I do that very intentionally because, again, that's a piece of me. I can't recreate that if I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I could create something similar, but every little piece is its own unique work, really. And that's very important to me. And it's just something very personal to me that I like it to sort of each little piece to have its own thumbprint and be unique. And I like infusing that with some positive energy. And maybe it's a little woo woo, but
Woo woo is good.
yeah, I mean, hey, I think that it seems to really resonate with people. And I've had great feedback from people that, you know, some really interesting connections that have happened as a result of some of those questions that I pose and things that I put on the back of the artwork. And yeah,
I
I've
think
made
it's
some
really
great friendships.
cool.
And
I mean,
well, thank
if
you.
if every artist did that, then think about how differently the world would view each piece of art instead of everyone standing there wondering what. Although art is so personal and
It is.
intimate for the viewer and the artist, I'm sure. But when you look at it, so many people go, I wonder what the artist was thinking. And if you put that out there, then they can think that with you. It's almost
Right.
symbiotic, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's beautiful. And I'll never quit doing that. I mean, people have asked like, hey, I'd love for you to make a print or, da, da, da. It's like, I don't know. I don't know that I can bring myself to it. I like keeping things as original as possible. That's just me. I may change my mind down the road, but it is what
um,
it is for now.
so a lot of your blog, you're talking about things that artists need to know, and you're sharing your knowledge, and which is very cool. And then some other things that you say made me think of Elizabeth Gilbert, a book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. And a quote from her book is, "It seems the less I fight my fear, the less it fights back. If I can relax, fear relaxes too." And you talk about how you how you try to like work with your fear and
Hmm.
when you're painting. Um, can you expound on that?
Yeah, I think, the fear, at least for me, when you're doing a piece, and for the listeners that aren't familiar, I do mostly abstract. So I paint, typically just visual. It's visual art and it's abstract paintings. The fear for me, I think, and maybe I can speak for a lot of artists, entrepreneurs, etc., is just that, is it going to be good enough? And I think, when you're in the studio and you're working through something, what I'm always trying to do, it's almost like I'm trying to speak a foreign language that I understand, but I can't fully articulate, is the best way that I can put it. And so it's like what I have in my mind's eye, I want to put on the canvas. And sometimes the canvas has different plans for me and it shows me something totally different, and it's scary. And I have to lean into that and trust that, okay, this wasn't what I had in my mind's eye. This wasn't what I was anticipating. The paint's kind of has a mind of its own. It's doing its own thing today. It's the boss and I'm just sort of here. Um, and you have to lean into that and kind of forget the fear of like, is this going to be good enough, and forget the finished product and almost lose yourself in the process and in the progress of the process, if that makes sense. Um,
Makes total
there's a
sense.
quote that I there's a quote that I have that, it says something along the lines of like, more progress, less perfection. And I have this tendency to just want everything to be perfect, and and I have the fear that, oh my God, if I release a painting that I don't feel is ready, it's not going to be good enough. And so that need for almost validation can sometimes supersede just letting go and going with the flow. And
Mm,
I've found when you let go and you kind of don't care what it ends up being, and who cares if it's not what you originally anticipated, the painting took a different direction. Sometimes those are the best paintings, and those are the ones everybody loves the most.
mhm.
And so, yeah, you just kind of have to lean into that fear. And as scary as it can be at times, like not have any control and
Yeah,
be okay with that. And I think that can be hard for people at
yeah,
times.
for sure. I mean, doing this podcast, right? Every single
Yeah.
podcast, I'm learning something new because
Yeah.
some doesn't work.
Yep. Yep.
um, there's that fear. I was like, oh, I'm not really ready. I don't understand the technology, everything that I'm doing. And if I didn't just do it, and that's something that
Right.
I talked about with Caleb. I interviewed Caleb a couple of weeks ago, and he talked a lot about what you just said. And he's,
Hmm.
he owns two businesses. And that's another quote from Elizabeth Gilbert: "Done is better than good."
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
As my
yeah.
dad says, don't let the progress, or don't let the enemy be the, I'm going to butcher it. I'm terrible at this, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or something like that.
Hmm.
But here's the thing, like, you're doing it, you're executing, therefore you're learning.
Hmm.
You could read as many manuals on how to do a podcast and how to run a successful business and all these things, but actually, you know getting your feet in the boots, getting out in the field and kind of being in the muck of it is the best education. That you don't need a degree, a textbook, a manual. I mean, you're doing it, and you're doing it your way, which is beautiful. It's not going to be somebody else's way, but that's the point of it, right?
Right.
It's unique, it's original.
It's about the experience,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, I think fear is a big thing. Um, and I talk in my intro about how I didn't need a college degree to run a restaurant. I didn't have one when I did. Um, but I'm a habitual learner. I'm constantly trying to learn new things, and I'm constantly studying. And once in a while, I say, "Oh, I don't know enough. I need to take this class, or I need to take that class before I can do that." And That's just a way of putting off the inevitable, right? Quit being
Yeah.
afraid and just jump
Yeah,
in.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't need the 25 hours of research, as my wife would say, because I like to sometimes get stuck in that loop, and she's like, "Oh my God, like you're not going to learn anything doing researching that. Like just go do the thing. You're going to learn more from doing the thing and getting further along than sitting inside, reading about the thing." So, yeah, I agree. And I think to do that, Joan, you have to have an interest. Being an interest and being interested in something and being like an expert at something at times like imposter syndrome stops people from leaning into that interest because they're like, "Oh, I'm not an expert at this thing. I can't do this." It's like you don't have to be an expert. Nobody's putting pressure on you besides yourself. You just have to be interested enough in something to want to execute on it, and then just have the endurance to keep that thing going. And sure enough, you have a business, you have a podcast, you have, a successful art career, whatever it may be. It's just the continuity of that interest and wanting to keep learning. So I think it's admirable what you're doing. I really do.
Ah, well, thank you. I'm in awe of you. I mean, you kick butt at so much. You're doing so much now. First of all, I mean, the art thing, you love art. Obviously, it's in you,
I
it's
do.
something in you. Um, but it's also a business for you. I mean,
Hmm.
you're doing it and you're selling it.
Hmm.
Um, do you think, well, I'm going to assume that because you have so much online experience or experience with online marketplace that was a big help for you.
I do. Yes. I do, but just because I own an e-commerce business doesn't mean I'm behind the keyboard doing the e-commerce stuff, right? I mean, I've got people in place to do those types of things, so I have familiarity with it, and I think I just wasn't afraid to like dive in and learn. Like I had to learn how to code some things. I had to learn how to, do things that I don't know how to do, even though I own and run a very successful e-commerce company. And it's similar to you, just having that interest and having that um, I don't know, I guess just wanting to always learn. I'm okay with like, yeah, I'll do it myself. I could pay someone to do it, but like I want to have this experience, I want to build it the way that I want to see it built, and I want to learn along the way. And so I really enjoy the process of that and learning new things. And so I do think having that a little bit of that experience did help me. But it's totally different now. Today's world, you can expose yourself via social media or online with a blog or a podcast, and go viral and catch the attention of people that otherwise, your art or your message or podcast or business maybe otherwise wouldn't have. And so it's really it levels the playing field, I think, for a lot of people. You just have to be willing to get out there and maybe make some mistakes and learn along the way and have technical difficulties, and be okay with like having some days where you're behind a computer trying to figure it out for 12 hours and you don't get anywhere, but at least you learned maybe what not to do.
Mm-hmm. What do you think you're doing right in the art world?
um that's a tough question for me to answer, because the art world is so finicky and fickle, and there's so many different ways that you can kind of look at that with just so many different lenses. I'm sure I could be laughed at in some arenas of the art world, praised in others. It's all relative based on where you're sitting in the stadium. Um, I think what I have done right is I'm just not afraid to put myself out there. I'm not afraid to, sit at a booth for 8 hours, talk to people, sell some paintings, have people say, "Wow, you're underpricing yourself." Have other people say, "Wow, you're overpricing." It's all feedback for me,
Mm-hmm.
positive, negative, indifferent. It's feedback. And how I kind of internalize that and what I do moving forward, I think maybe is the differentiator. I'm not really sure, but I would say probably I'm not afraid to put myself out there if I had to say, like, maybe what I'm doing different. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not afraid of that rejection, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Well, that takes some balls.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's when
Well,
you
it's
have a
like,
good support system, and when you like, when you're confident that like hey, this is the best that, like, this is a representation of the best that I am right now. This is what I'm bringing to the table. I mean, yeah, what do you have
Ooh,
to
what a
lose?
great way to look at it.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't have
Caleb
anything to
said,
lose.
Caleb said, well, uh, I know you have to hear a certain number of no's. And so when I
Hmm.
hear a no, then I get excited because I'm closer to the yes.
Hmm.
What a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to find, and you find your people too, you know? So the no's just get you closer to your people that will appreciate, you know, your art, your podcast, your business, whatever it is that you're doing. You'll
Hmm.
find your tribe for sure.
Yeah. So tell us about your newest venture, finance wise.
Sure. So, yeah, it's just kind of a fun thing that I'm posting. I'm not as regular as I would like to be on there, but it's basically an Instagram and a blog that goes through, you know, what I think, Joan, should be basic knowledge. We should be teaching this kind of stuff in school. And for the listeners, it's you know, I wouldn't say it's financial advice because, you know, legally I have to say that, but it's basically, you know, very common, what should be common knowledge for investing. You know, people get scared about, oh gosh, investors, that's like for the Warren Buffetts of the world or the Jeff Bezos. It's like, no, everyday people who are working a 9 to 5 job with wife and kids and a mortgage and, you know, $50,000 a year job can become a millionaire. It's, you don't, you know, it's not rocket science. It's just spend less than you make
Mm-hmm.
and invest the difference. And you do that consistently over time, and you can build yourself a really healthy portfolio. Um, and this stuff should be taught. This stuff like is not taught. You know, we think we have to lean on these financial advisors that take commissions and fees, or we think that this is something that's like only, you know, Wall Street people should know how to do, and it's just not the case at all. So I wanted to try to bring, you know, some of that education and some of that knowledge to whoever it may be, whether it's, you know, the LGBT community, whether it's women, um, and try to impart a little bit of maybe hope for some people, because I think that, especially in today's world on social media, people can compare lives and think, oh man, I'm not doing good enough, or I'm not making that 6 figure salary. And it's like, you don't have to do those things or live that life in order to achieve wealth for yourself and financial freedom. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that I can help some people along the way with that. I love personal finance. It's like that's a hobby and a passion of mine. And so it's purely like if I can help, you know, one or two people, then I see that as like success. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to, you know, um, monetize it or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I follow it obviously and ask a few questions here and there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you talk about directing the money in your 401k or your IRA, and
Hmm.
it's something that when you sign up for that, they ask you where do you want to put your money, and so many
Hmm.
people don't give the person who's running that the direction at
Right.
all.
No, no. Yeah, and you know, if I could just say like invest in index funds, low fee index funds, you know, if you want to set it and forget it, pick a target date index fund. And I mean, it can be as simple as it auto drafts out of your bank account. It'll invest into the index fund that you want it to, and you set it and forget it. You do that for 30 years at $500 a month, and you know, you have a 7 figure portfolio. And hopefully, if you're starting early, in your 20s, you're potentially retiring in, you know, your 50s or something. So yeah, it's so, the financial world unfortunately is so overly complex, and
Mhm.
it absolutely does not need to be. um, and I think that that's starting to change a little bit, and I'm hoping that I can, you know, hopefully be part of that conversation. And again,
You
if
and
I could help
other
one or two
women,
people.
right?
Exactly, exactly.
There's other women that are out there saying that women have always understood that they're not supposed to know about that stuff, and the guys are the ones that are all into it, and there's very few women that know what they're doing. And let's let's empower some women
Oh
with some
man.
knowledge.
You know what's crazy is female investors outperform male investors. That is a fact. That is a fact. And it's because we stay the course. Men tend to be, there's some studies that have been done. Men tend to be a little more fickle, and they like to try and get in there and tweak and think that they're, fixing things. But over the course of time, the studies have compared, and women tend to be better investors than men. They outperform men. So,
Ah,
you know,
you know. So you got a book that you can recommend?
oh gosh. I actually have a ton of books that I could recommend. I have it on maybe we could put it in the show notes on the blog. I've got like a list of my top 20 personal finance books that I would recommend. And different ones go through various different things. I have summaries of all the different books. Gosh,
What's
I
your
don't know that
top
I could.
favorite? What's your favorite one?
Oh gosh. Um, that's tricky.
I listened to, or I recently read Rich Bitch, which I thought was good. It was a good
Yeah.
intro.
Yeah. I really liked Millionaire Next Door, The Millionaire Next Door,
Okay.
just because it showed and highlighted that like the everyday millionaire is not the one wearing the Rolex, driving the Mercedes, with the blah, 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 blah. They fly under the radar, they're the typical spend less than you make, invest the
Mm-hmm.
difference. And over time, you grow wealth. And it just kind of breaks down, what career they're in, what their average salary is. It was the largest study ever done on millionaires. Dave Ramsey actually just outdid that. So he has a book that kind of replaces that one. But I liked that one just for the, breaking the stigma of thinking like when people think like, what is a millionaire, multimillionaire? What do they look, dress, and live like? And that book really broke that down and kind of debunked a lot of what, society thinks that may look like. So I liked that one. But yeah, I'll have to send you my link in the show notes. There's so many good ones. They all basically say spend less than you make and invest the difference in a low fee index fund. That's like if I could summarize almost all of them,
Okay. So
that's it.
everybody needs to know that. Spend
Yeah,
less than you make and invest in low fee index
index
fund.
funds. Yep, yep.
And how do you know that they're low fee?
Usually anything less than like 2%, like anything over 2%. So, and I kind of
That
break down what's
that's
that?
the person that you're investing with, that you're putting your money in, the brokerage.
Right,
So
right. So if you go to fidelity.com and you're looking at index funds, you can see the fees. And it'll typically, the ones for Fidelity, they have some zero fee index funds that are like 0.05% or something. It's like less than half of a percent. And that's important because over time, as you're building up to six figures and then into seven figures, 2% is a lot of money. And they're taking that every year. And so you want to stick with a low fee index fund within your brokerage. So if you're within Vanguard, you want to stick with Vanguard. If you're in Fidelity, you want to stick with Fidelity index funds. You don't want to buy Fidelity index funds in a Vanguard account. That's kind of, you're going to pay unnecessary fees for doing that, so yeah, I would say anything that would be less than 2% or even 1% would be considered a low fee.
okay. Um, if you could offer one piece of advice about business and following your passions, what would it be?
Oh, um, I would say know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers. Um, a lot of people shy away from that. They think, oh, I'll just give it to my accountant. I'll give it to my CPA. I'll look at the numbers, year end when tax season. You got to know your numbers. Knowing your numbers, you have to be willing to ask questions that may seem stupid, like, hey, what is a balance sheet? What's on a balance sheet? Walk me through that. What is a P&L? What is, income statement, blah, blah, blah. Knowing your numbers and your financials within your business gives you confidence and honestly, it takes the guesswork out of it because it gives you a roadmap to know, here's where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this is what we have to hit to be baseline. Here's how long we can run on fumes if we had to before going out of business. And here's what we need to do in order to grow. And so I think if you can be willing to really sit down. It's going to take time. Excuse me. Learn and understand your numbers and your financials. Understand how to read those numbers. Work with your accountant. Don't be shy to ask silly questions. Ask the silly questions. I promise they'll probably appreciate it because nobody ever asks accountants questions. Hey, can you elaborate on that? Like, or hey, this number didn't line up with my number. Um, so yeah, I think really knowing your numbers will help you gain confidence. And because it's a business, whether it's a hobby, a nonprofit, a for-profit, doesn't matter what vehicle it is, it's still a business. And being able to understand what you need to keep going and the sustenance that your business will need, I think is really helpful.
Right. And
And
if you're not looking at those P&Ls, then you're not knowing where you're overspending, and you
exactly.
can't make judgment calls on when you do need to save a little money. Where is it that you're going to save that money? You've got to look at those P&Ls so that you can say, overspending here. What was it I bought? Why am I over? So you
Right.
can make adjustments before it's too late,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say looking at them on a, doesn't have to be a weekly basis, but at least a monthly basis. Because if let's say you have three different departments, sales, marketing, and customer service, and sales generates 90% of your revenue, but, you know, 80% of your payroll goes to marketing. I mean, that's a misappropriation. You have to be able to understand kind of what's bringing money into the business, what's taking money out of the business. Does that make sense? Does that not make sense? So I would say, knowing your numbers is key and critical. And before starting OPT, I was familiar with financial statements. I was not as savvy as I've become over the years. But I wasn't afraid to be the idiot that asked the question, like, wait a second, this doesn't look right. Like, hey, how did you build that cash flow statement?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you have to, again, be curious and be interested and want to learn and, be a beginner and have that interest and know that you're
And
not an expert.
there's a little running theme here, Ginny. You have no fear.
Ah, I don't know. I do have fear though. That's the thing. Like, I do have fear, and,
You
it can
just
be,
take a pickaxe to it. Boom.
I don't know. I don't know that that's totally true
Sledgehammer.
though. I don't know that that's totally true. I do have fear, and I do, have an amazing support group who is, my parents, my wife, who, like, Stacy, my wife, definitely pushed me into getting myself out there more with my art and was like, hey, book some shows. Like, here's a list of some shows. Like, take what you want to do with this list. But, like, I found a list of some shows. And then she just kind of nags me, like, hey, did you sign up for some shows? And so it's like, you got to have that great support system. But yeah. And then yeah, I don't know. I
So
do have fear. I
do
think
you
I just,
have like a formal group, or do you have a coach, or do you have a mentor, or do you have a mastermind group, or do you just have these people that that you turn to when you need advice or want to throw an
yeah,
idea by?
that's a great question. I've never had like a formal business coach or anything. I've read tons of business books, spent countless hours on YouTube, like listening to people who have been wildly successful in multiple avenues of their life, listen to their interviews, listen to, how they see problems and how they tackle new ventures and things of that nature, and just try to absorb like a little sponge as much information and insight as I can from them. My parents were very, very successful entrepreneurs, very creative. There's definitely been times where I've called my mom and been like, okay, we had an employee show up totally wasted on the job.
Hmm.
I need your advice. I need to pick your brain on this. I've never been put in a situation like, how would you have handled something like this?
Hmm.
Um, and just ask those questions. I'm not afraid to kind of tap into that community. Because nothing's a solo show. Like, nothing in life, you do not go it alone. And for those listening that maybe are afraid to ask the neighbor or reach out to Joan for business advice or whoever it may be, don't be afraid. None of us get out of this thing alone, and we're not going through it alone. And so reaching out to my parents, or, the support of my wife, who early on when we were dating had to be understanding that the only time we got was like her coming to the office and bringing takeout, and while I finished work until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and we just kind of coexisted in that space together, and she held that space for me, and was fully understanding and supportive, and then was able to impart different feedback. She just sees the world differently than I do, and sees people and problems. And so being able to lean on my parents, my wife, and a few other entrepreneurs that I've met along the way and along the journey, just to be like, hey, we're kind of going through this thing right now. Like, am I right in thinking this? Or, is there a different way I should be looking at this? Has been like insanely helpful in me, or for me in my journey. So yeah, I encourage people, read the books, like listen to the YouTubes, listen to the podcast, find a business coach if you don't have entrepreneurial people that you have within your close circle, because it helps. It definitely helps.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ginny, it has been such a pleasure getting to know you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No, it's been a blast.
Really appreciate it. So join me next time, Sunday, September 25th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, when I speak with the founders of Second Street Hooligans. In 2016, Nick and Rachel O'Neill began adopting farm animals in need of a loving forever home. By 2018, they established Second Street Hooligans as a registered 501c3 nonprofit animal rescue. Their mission is to advocate for the humane treatment of all animals through education and by inspiring a cruelty-free lifestyle. By fostering compassion through education, they seek to make the world a brighter place for all beings. We'll talk about how this love project started, how they navigated running a nonprofit, and what's on the horizon for Second Street Hooligans and the O'Neill family. Why am I doing this podcast? Because it's important to me that you know that we all have it in us to succeed. My guests weren't born into royalty. They're normal people like you and me who saw an opportunity and they ran with it. Listen here live every other Sunday at 6 p.m. Central for tips, tricks, and just plain old inspiration. And make sure that you follow us on Spotify and Anchor for all the episodes. If you're looking for more specific help with your restaurant or hospitality industry, check out www.yourrestaurantmaven.com. Read my blog and connect with me for coaching and consulting opportunities. Thanks again, Ginny. I really appreciate it. And we will see you all next time.